Hey everybody, and welcome to another training here. Today I thought I would show you how to set up Gravity Forms to talk to your FreshBooks account. It's just one way I use Gravity Forms to make my process a little bit more automated. So let's get started. The first thing that we need to do is we need to create a new form. I'll start that over. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to make sure that we've got Gravity Forms installed, and we want to make sure that we've got the add-in for FreshBooks installed. Here you can see I've got Gravity Forms already installed, and just want to double check your support license key to make sure that you've got that going okay. When you get down to add-ons, you might not be able to install these. You might have a warning message. So just make sure that you've got that license key that you're given with Gravity Forms. From here, all we have to do is come over here to FreshBooks and click the little install button. This will go ahead and install the plugin, and we'll go ahead and activate it. So you can see here we've got Gravity Forms, and we've got the Gravity Forms FreshBooks add-on added here. Now I'm using a test site, so don't worry if a Kismet is deactivated. I'm just using this for setting up my form here, so I'm not really in need of a Kismet. From here we can go ahead and create a new form. So let's click on New Form under the Forms menu, and we'll be presented with our new form window. Now one thing I'm using with Gravity Forms is I'm using the 1.6 RC4 version, so it may look a little bit different as we go through this form, but I want to stress that this is really what it'll look like after you get an update here. So the first thing I like to do is actually name the form, and I usually like to call especially a form that I want somebody to sign or to fill out that's going to do some sort of a proposal or quote, is call it something like that. So we'll call this our quote form. Remember that we don't have to use this title for anything out on the site. We can put in our own title, but this helps us, or at least helps me when I'm administering the site, know what form this is. Now if you want to add a description here, you can add that just like we've added any other Gravity Form description. We're going to just go ahead and leave this the same for right now. I don't have any form settings I want to do yet. I just want to start adding some fields, and those fields really are kind of your generic fields. So we're going to add a name, we're going to add a phone, an email, an address, a website, and we're going to be, I think that's enough advanced forms. We'll go up here to standard forms, and we'll do a drop down form, a paragraph text, and actually one I want is a date, and I think that's under advanced. Yep, date. Okay, so now these aren't necessarily in the order that we're going to use them. I just wanted to get them all over here so that we could go start working with this. The first thing I want to do is I want to change my form fields for name. This is the normal format. You could do extended, so you could do a prefix and a suffix, or you could do something just simple. For your Gravity Forms, for your FreshBooks forms, I really like to have the normal one so that we've got our first and last name separated. And one thing I want to do is I want to make sure that this is required. I want to make sure I've got somebody's name if they're filling this out. The next one I like to do is I like to kind of put the address up next, and let me get it just to make sure. Okay. So I like to make sure I have the address, and this is just for billing purposes later on. Um, if we edit this, if you deal with international people, you might want to have the address type be international. If you're only United States, though, you could switch that to United States. That would be one option. Since I deal with international people, though, we're going to leave it as international. And I know for a fact that most people that I talk to are from the United States, so I'm going to start with the United States as kind of my default country here. Now the next one is I want to make sure this is required as well. I want them to fill this out. I want to have this information. The next is phone, and we're going to move that down a little bit because that's less important to me, especially when it comes to international customers. But email is very important, so I want to make sure that this is required. And if you want, you could actually enable an email confirmation. And sometimes I like to do this just to make sure that they get that they're putting in their email correct. So if you want to do some sort of a confirmation to make sure that these two fields match, you can do that very easily. The phone is another one, and this I make optional. And I make this optional really for US only, so we're going to show you how to do that. If you go under here, under Advanced, and click on Enable Conditional Logic, I can say, looks like I might not be able to do it. I was going to see if I could do, if country was United States, then I could do that. So I guess for now we'll just leave it without the conditional logic. And I'm not going to make this required because I don't want to necessarily have everybody fill this out. I want it to be an option for them. Website. This is kind of, if they have a website, let them fill that out. And then we get down to a drop-down field. And this I want to have as some kind of a budget. So I call it a budget, and then I'll put less than 500. Say 500 to 1,000. And maybe 1,000 or greater. Something like that. This way I just have, I can get an idea of what their budget is and possibly work with them depending on what they want. The text field, or the paragraph text field, this is what I like to call the description of project. So give me an idea of what your project's going to consist of. And actually that's what I put in for the description. So once we've got that in here, if you want to limit it to maximum characters, you can do that. Now I do like to require this field, so we'll go ahead and leave that required. And then finally the date. And what I like to use for the date is I like to use some sort of like an expected launch date. And I like to just use a date picker, and I like to use a calendar icon like this. So we'll just go ahead and do that. And then I like to also make this field required as well. So once we've created our form, there's some other things you could do with the form. You could maybe switch it up into contact information, project information, etc. And you could do all sorts of different things like that. But for this purpose, I'm just going to go ahead and save the form and say that we're happy with it. Another thing you could do is you could set up email notifications for the form as well. So every time somebody submits an entry into the form, you get emailed. If you want to get emailed like that, which you typically do, you can set that up here. For now, I'm just going to go back to the form list though. So here's all the forms I've got created on my tutorial site here. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to go down underneath FreshBooks. So if we go under here, we're going to see FreshBooks feeds, and we need to create a new one. Now, one thing that we haven't done yet is we haven't created our FreshBooks or provided our FreshBooks username and password so that Gravity Forms knows how to get in. So we need to go over here to the settings page. And here we just need to put in our site name and our authorization token. And if you don't have a FreshBooks account, you can get a free one. So we're going to go get a free one right now. So we're going to try this for free. Okay, so once we've logged in here, we'll be able to enter all of our information. Now, some of this stuff is pretty normal. Just your company name, your first name, last name, street address, all that stuff. And you can see that their required information has asterisks as well. So here, the top 3, for instance, is their required information. As we go down, you can set your username and password. So we'll go ahead and do that. And I'm just going to use my email address and a common password that I use. And I'm going to go ahead and agree to their terms of service and privacy policy. One thing I recommend, I use these guys all the time, so I know I've read these at least once or twice. So if you are new to FreshBooks, definitely take a few moments to read this, especially because they're from Canada, and Canada law and US law might be a little different. So just read these over just as a precaution. And once you're ready to go ahead and click the Get Started button. And then now, here you can see we're into our site. So the one thing that we needed was our site name. And you can see our site name up here is My Super Cool Company. So I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to bring it into here. And now I need the authorization token. Well, the authorization token is actually under I believe My Accounts and then FreshBooks API. And we get this authorization token right here. So you can copy this and paste it over here. Now, one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to obviously reset this so that you guys can't use this. But I do want to show you everything without kind of not showing it. So once we're done, we just click this Update Settings button, and it will say valid site name and authorization token. So Gravity Forms is going to go check and make sure that the information you provided in these 2 fields are accurate and that they can get in. Click FreshBooks over here on the left-hand side, and we'll get our FreshBooks feed and click Add New up at the top. Now all we have to do is select a form we want to use. So in this case, our quote form. And we'll be presented with several fields that FreshBooks needs to have filled out. By default, FreshBooks needs to have 4 fields set up. It needs to have your email, your first name, your last name, and your organization. Those are really the only 4 fields required for the FreshBooks feed to be hooked up. So what I typically do is just match them up based on my form. So for email, we'll go ahead and find the email address. For first name, we'll go ahead and do the name first, and then last name, we'll do name last. And then for organization, what I like to do for that, because I don't necessarily know who I'm working with, if it's a nonprofit or if it's a company, is their name. And this way, by using their name, I can go in later and adjust this so that if it is, say, Apple or Amazon or whatever their company or nonprofit name is, I can go in and fill this out in FreshBooks later. If I have the address, the phone, or the fax number in the form on my site, I'll go ahead and at this time add those in. There's no reason to not add those into FreshBooks. The more information I get into FreshBooks, the less I'm having to add myself later on. In this instance, though, what I also want to do is create an estimate. And by creating an estimate, we can kind of go that one step further for our form. we can create a draft estimate in FreshBooks. Then all I have to do is go in to FreshBooks and fill out that information. At this point, I don't usually like to use a PO number. I don't usually give a discount, and I don't use any line item entries, although you could pull costs and quantities from specific form fields if your form had those. If you have any other kind of generic notes or generic terms that you want to add at this time, you could add those. In this case, though, I just like to create the estimate, though, and kind of leave it alone. So I'm just going to go ahead and save our feed here. And once we've saved our feed, the form is ready to go. All we need to do is add it to a page. So let's go under Pages and Add New. And we're going to call the form Quote Page, just for happenstance now. If you haven't added a form into a page before, you can use a shortcode method, which kind of gets a little confusing because it actually requires you to remember all the variables that get passed through in that. But what Gravity Forms has done is something a little bit better, and they've really changed this to where you can just click a button up here under Upload and Insert, and then select the form that you want to embed or insert into the page. Decide if you want to display the form title, if you want to display the form description, and if you want to enable Ajax. I usually like to enable Ajax here just because that way I don't have another page to go to, and I want to give them some sort of a display message that says something has happened. So what it actually does is insert that shortcode. When we're ready, just click Publish, and we can view the page now. So here I'm using the 2011 theme, and if we scroll down, you can see here is our form. So now I'm just going to go ahead and fill this out really quickly so that we can see what happens on the FreshBooks side of things. And when the form is done, all we have to do is click Submit, and we get our little thank you message that we can edit in our Gravity Forms settings. So let's go over to FreshBooks now and take a look at what happens on the FreshBooks side. If we click Home and then go to Estimates, you'll see that we've now got an estimate here for our John Miller client. And you'll also notice that the status is a draft. We can click on either the estimate number or edit to be able to actually start editing our draft estimate. And if it's your first time using FreshBooks, you'll get this warning message that just asks you if you want to use time headings or item headings in your estimate. You can change these later in your settings under miscellaneous. For my purpose, though, I usually charge somewhat by time, by an hour base. So I like to use time headings, so I'm just going to click Continue. And now here, I'm going to set up a few tasks that I know I'll use over and over again. And when I'm finished with those, I'll have a nice estimate completed for you. Okay, so once the estimate is completed, it'll look something like this. And I kind of order my tasks in the time that I go from beginning to end of a project. So anything I do at the beginning of the project is going to be at the top of the estimate, and then on down, just so that it gives me an idea and it kind of makes sense as you read it over. FreshBooks allows you to actually just save this estimate or send it by an email. And because we created our form on our site that already included our client's email address, FreshBooks is already going to know right where to send it because we've linked those up previously. So we can go ahead and send this invoice, and we'll be all ready. On our side, we'll be all ready where we won't have to do anything else. The client will get an email. They're going to get it from the email that you signed up with from FreshBooks. So generally speaking, make sure that that's an email address you're okay with sending out to people. If you want to change that email address, you can just go under Settings or My Account and change it there. And that's pretty much it for this video. Over the course of the next several videos, I'll show you other ways I've got WordPress, Gravity Forms, and FreshBooks integrated into each other so that you can create other workflows and automate them in ways that you'll be able to save 5 or 10 minutes as you work on client business admin type tasks, and really let you get back to doing what you do best, the develop and the design of a website, or the marketing or the SEO, or whatever it is that you offer a client. So tune in hopefully later this week, if not next week, and see how other ways of integrating FreshBooks and WordPress can work together. Thanks for watching.